at the high level, technically, how does Bitcoin work? Is there interesting things you could say, like what are miners, what are nodes, full nodes, what are blocks, what's proof of work? Is there a nice way to wrap up a clean explanation of the protocol?
Oh man, that could be another 5 hours.
Is there interesting, because I'd love to talk to you about block size wars and sort of the politics, the psychology, the principles around that, but sort of building up to that, it'd be nice to talk about how the thing works.
That's fair. I mean, and the block size wars are a really fascinating discussion of how governance debates intersect with technical features. So I guess we can, so basically at the highest possible level, Bitcoin is a globally shared, it's really a replicated ledger that any participant that wants to be an equal peer on that ledger, they want to maintain that ledger and they want to stay up to date with the global state of the ledger. And really any monetary system is just a ledger with physical cash. We benefit from the physical instantiation of the money.
So the physics is the ledger.
The physics is the ledger, right? Same with gold, right? You can't just produce new units of gold. So we trust that gold atoms are hard to create, although not impossible, right? You could fire a bunch of protons and whatever is the adjacent metal and create gold atoms. It'd be expensive. And the same with dollars. We trust that it's hard to counterfeit a dollar. So we trust the physical analog world to help maintain the state of that ledger. With digital money, like the money in your bank account, your checking account, we basically trust our institutions or banking institutions to keep a faithful record, and then ultimately we trust the central bank to administer that system. So there's kind of a handful of nodes. In Bitcoin, we trust that the economic incentives of the system are carefully poised, basically. So we trust that the free market mining competition will lead to the miners assembling transactions into blocks in a faithful and correct way, and that we are going to converge on a global state of the ledger continuously, which updates every 10 minutes or so with some variance. And then the miners aren't the sole entities that control the system. To really participate, if you're a merchant and you're accepting Bitcoin, you really want to run your own full node and check the whole history of transactions. It's sort of something like, I want to say 500 to 600 million transactions that have ever occurred on Bitcoin.
So a full node contains all the transactions ever transacted on the Bitcoin blockchain, and that's, I saw it's like 200 gigs or something like that.
Like 350, something like that. It's doable on a regular consumer laptop, and that is going to be really key later on in the discussion.
Sure.
But so, that's really the ultimate trust models. First of all, we trust that the miners that assemble transactions into blocks, and they are the archivists, they inscribe those transactions onto the ledger, and they have an economic incentive to sort of behave correctly because they're getting paid in no units of Bitcoin. That's part of it. But then really you're not fully trusting them. You're actually, if you want to run a node, you replay every single transaction in the history of Bitcoin from the beginning to the current day, and you arrive at the present state that way. So you don't really have to trust too many people or entities. You can validate the correctness of that all the rules have been followed, that all the Bitcoins that were created were done so in the valid way, that the inflation rate was adhered to, and that there's no covert inflation, that if you're spending 50 units of Bitcoin, you had that Bitcoin to spend in the first place. So it's sort of delicately poised between node operators who engage in this validity checking, kind of anti-counterfeiting checking, and then also the miners, which are an industrial entity, and they basically produce block space and assemble transactions into blocks.
And so the miners are incentivized to not mess with the system because they're getting value from the system. So if they mess with it, it's going to decrease the value of their physical work investment.
Yeah, so they have to incur a real physical cost to produce a block, right? So right now, You get 6.25 Bitcoins in a block at a minimum, and then maybe some fees as well. And
How hard is it to produce a block now?
well, challenging. I mean, you need so 6.25 Bitcoins, and a Bitcoin's worth $55,000 or so. So it's probably going to cost you about that amount to produce it, because it's a free market competition, and miners have very thin margins. So it's like if I auction off $1, you would pay up to 99 cents to buy that dollar from me. It's exactly what happens with miners. They're, basically competing for the right to obtain new units of money. So logically speaking, they would pay up to the value of that money in order to earn it.
And for people who are not familiar, the process of mining is solving a difficult cryptographic problem. That's a computational problem.
I would say it's not like people sometimes represent it as like a really challenging puzzle. Like the individual puzzle is very simple. Like you can do it with pen and paper if you wanted, like SHA-256. It's just that you're searching through the big mathematical space to find the needle in the haystack. You're just doing lots of iterations of a simple puzzle.
It's just brute force, hence like the stability of the whole idea of the proof of work. If it was if there was a shortcut, it wouldn't work.
Exactly. So let's hope nobody solves SHA-256.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussions from the quantum computing space, but everybody I talk to, all my colleagues and that work on quantum computers, say that we're quite a long way away from that being an issue in cryptography and certainly an issue in cryptocurrency.
That should have been one of the sides on these dice. It should have been quantum.
Quantum?
Because I don't think it is. I forgot to put it on this edition.
People should check out Scott Aronson. There's a lot of people that are kind of selling quantum snake oil. So you should be very careful. I think it is a really exciting space that might change the world in the next decade or couple hundred years, especially for simulating quantum mechanical systems. But in quantum machine learning, people should check out TensorFlow Quantum. It's a nice way to sort of educate yourself about the space. And actually, if you're pragmatically minded to, through software engineering, explore how you simulate quantum circuits, how you run machine learning on those quantum circuits. The main point that Scott Aronson, people should check out his blog too, is that like there's not yet a single machine learning application that doesn't do almost as well in a classical computer. So it doesn't, like, yes, the dream is somehow quantum computers will change the nature of artificial intelligence, but there's yet to be an actual algorithm that or a problem set or a data set where that would be the case. So skepticism is good in this space.